Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tell me, have you ever sat across from a younger woman, her eyes curious, her energy vibrant, and felt something unspoken in the air? Not just attraction. Something deeper, like a question lingering between the lines of conversation, a quiet invitation to see if you're one of the rare ones who understands her without trying to impress her. You see, we often talk about what younger women say they want, the charm, the confidence, the thrill, but we rarely talk about what they don't say, what they secretly crave from a man with a little more life behind his eyes. A man who's walked through love and loss, through confusion and clarity. A man who's not just older in age but richer in insight. Because here's the truth, when a younger woman leans in to talk to an older man, it's not always for protection or praise. Sometimes it's because she longs to hear something she can't get from men her own age. Not pick-up lines, not shallow praise, but words that wrap around her insecurities like a warm coat on a cold day. Words that say, I see the woman in you, not the girl you pretend to be. So in today's conversation, we're going to explore what those words are. The ones that don't just make her smile, but make her feel safe, seen, and desired. Not because you're trying to win her, but because you understand her. There's something beautifully complicated about desire, don't you think? The way it moves in shadows, speaks in silence, and reveals itself not in grand declarations, but in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. And when it comes to younger women and older men, the dynamic isn't always what people assume it to be. We often reduce these relationships to something transactional, like he has the stability, she has the youth. But that's not what this conversation is about. I want to take you deeper than that, because what younger women are drawn to in older men isn't just material. It's emotional, it's psychological, it's rooted in the rare feeling of being understood without having to explain everything, of being met in her chaos by a man who doesn't flinch. So today, I want you to step into this space with me, not as a performer or a pursuer, but as a listener, a witness, a man willing to tune into the deeper currents of attraction that most people overlook. I'm going to share with you 6 things younger women secretly love to hear from older men, but rarely, if ever, will admit, not because they're manipulative or coy, but because these are not things they think they're allowed to want, because wanting these things would make them vulnerable. And the moment a woman feels safe enough to be vulnerable with you, that's the moment she feels truly connected. Let's begin. There's a certain kind of magic that happens when a man looks at a woman and says, with unshaken calm, you don't have to impress me, just that. 5 words, and you'd be amazed at the weight that drops from her shoulders when she hears them. Most younger women are navigating a world that constantly demands performance. On social media, at work, in friendships, even in dating, there's an invisible pressure to be interesting, desirable, different. And beneath all that, there's often an aching question in her, am I enough as I am? When an older man, grounded in his own sense of self, says to her, I don't need the performance, what he's really saying is, I see you beyond your armor. And that's rare. That's intimacy. That's why it lands so powerfully. Because younger women, for all their youthful radiance, carry just as much insecurity as anyone else. And hearing that they don't need to earn your attention, or entertain you, or dazzle you to deserve your presence, that's like water in a desert. But it's not just the words, it's how you say it. When you say it from a place of calm, when your eyes soften instead of scan, when you ask questions because you want to know her, not because you're trying to impress her, that's when the words mean something. That's when they go from a line to a landing place, a place where she can take off the mask and breathe. And when she breathes around you, she begins to trust you. That's where connection starts. Now let's talk about something else she secretly loves to hear, though she might never admit it. It's the moment you say, I like how you think. Not, you're so hot, not you're cute, not, I love your body, though those can be lovely too, but I like how you think. That's a seduction of the mind. And for a woman who is used to being looked at, but rarely listened to, this can feel revolutionary. You see, younger women, especially those who date older men, are often searching for more than just affection. They're searching for validation of their minds. They want to know that they're not just a body or a pretty face to someone who's seen so many. They want to feel that their thoughts matter, that they have something meaningful to contribute. And when you notice that, when you pause the rhythm of flirtation and say, that's an interesting perspective, tell me more, you become unforgettable. Because you're no longer just a man who desires her. You become a man who respects her, who makes her feel intelligent. And let me tell you something, when a woman feels intelligent around you, when she feels valued not just for how she looks but for how her mind works, her attraction deepens. It becomes layered, textured, rich. But again, it has to be authentic. You can't fake this. You can't compliment her thinking just to get closer to her body. She'll sense that. She'll recoil. But if your compliment is genuine, if you actually do admire the way she frames an idea or connects thoughts, that's when your words become intimacy. And here's something you may not realize. When you say, I like how you think, you're giving her permission to explore more of herself in your presence. You're inviting her to be bold, to take intellectual risks, to be creative. You're not putting her in a cage of youth and beauty. You're opening a door to freedom. That's rare. That's intimate. And yes, that's deeply attractive. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a woman's eyes light up, not because you complimented her outfit or her smile, but because you saw something in her that she didn't even know was visible? That's what this is about. So many men chase women by trying to appear impressive. But the truth, what most younger women secretly crave from older men, is the feeling that they don't have to chase being seen, that you already see them, that your gaze isn't about possession, it's about recognition. So now we've touched two of the things that leave an imprint on her heart. The moment she hears that she doesn't need to perform, and the moment she realizes you truly respect how her mind works. But we're just getting started, because desire doesn't live in big gestures. It lives in the small words spoken at the right time by the man who knows how to say them without needing anything in return. There's something beautifully disarming about being understood without needing to explain. For many younger women, especially those who find themselves drawn to older men, the world often demands that they prove themselves over and over again, that they define who they are, justify what they want, and shrink their desires to fit someone else's expectations. So when you, an older man, look her in the eyes and say something as simple as, "You don't owe me anything," something shifts inside her. It's subtle, almost invisible, but the effect is profound, because we live in a world where so many interactions come with invisible strings, where affection is traded for attention, interest is tied to expectations, and even compliments carry conditions. But when you speak without expectation, when your interest is genuine, when your presence says, "You're safe here," it creates an emotional spaciousness most people never experience. And that sentence, "You don't owe me anything," doesn't sound romantic on paper, but in her ears, in that moment, it becomes everything. It becomes an invitation to breathe, to unfold, to trust. It lets her know that your presence isn't transactional, that you're not keeping score, that you're here because you want to be, not because you're waiting for a return on investment. And that changes everything, because the paradox of intimacy is that it grows strongest where there is freedom. And when a woman feels emotionally unchained around you, her defenses lower, her desire rises, and she begins to offer herself not out of obligation but out of choice, because she wants to, because she chooses you. And here's something else she won't admit out loud, perhaps because it makes her feel exposed, or maybe because she's never quite put it into words herself. She wants to hear you say, "You're not too much." That one hits a place deep in her, because whether she's passionate, outspoken, sensitive, intense, or just a woman with strong opinions, there's a fear in her that she's too much for someone, that her beingness will scare you, that her emotions will exhaust you, that her desire will make her undesirable. So when you say to her, gently, sincerely, "You're not too much for me, I can handle you, I like your fire," you're giving her the kind of affirmation that doesn't just turn her on, it liberates her. You become the man she doesn't have to shrink herself for. And that, for a woman who's been told to dim her light, is intoxicating, because younger women often feel they have to edit themselves. Be cool, be chill, don't cry, don't want too much, don't be needy. And when she meets a man who not only tolerates her depth, but adores it, that's when emotional intimacy deepens into sensual connection. But again, it's not just about saying the words, it's about how you hold space for them. It's how you respond when she shares a strong opinion. It's how you stay present when she cries or gets passionate about something you may not understand. It's how you resist the urge to fix her or quiet her or manage her. Because when you say, "You're not too much," you're telling her, "Your emotions are not a burden. Your thoughts are not a threat. Your complexity doesn't intimidate me. It intrigues me." That's the language of emotional safety. That's the language of real connection. Now let me tell you something I've seen over and over again. One of the greatest seductions for a woman, especially a younger one still learning to trust herself, is when a man simply says, "Take your time." In dating, we're so conditioned to rush, to label things, to make decisions fast. Are we exclusive? Are we serious? Are we in or are we out? And in that rush, we often bypass the most tender moments, the pauses where real connection lives. So when you, an older man with experience and self-assurance, look her in the eye and say, "There's no rush, take your time, I'm not going anywhere," you're offering something rare. You're offering her the gift of pacing. You're showing her that she doesn't have to perform a relationship. She can feel her way into it. She can explore. She can be unsure. She can reveal herself slowly, and she won't be punished for it. That's when trust deepens. That's when intimacy grows, not from pressure, but from permission. And something happens inside a woman when she's given time. She becomes more herself. She lets her guard down. She starts to show you not just the polished version of herself, but the real messy, vulnerable parts, the parts she hides from the world. And when you receive those parts with gentleness instead of judgment, you become more than a man to her. You become a sanctuary. And do you know what that creates? Desire. Because true desire, especially for a woman, blooms where there is safety, where there is space, where there is time. That's what you offer her when you slow things down. Not boredom, but a deeper burn, a richer heat, a connection that isn't just about pleasure but about presence. Now, I want you to really consider something. All these things. You don't have to impress me. I like how you think. You don't owe me anything. You're not too much. Take your time. They're not just phrases. They're postures, they're energies. They're signals that tell her you are seen, you are safe. You are wanted not for what you do, but for who you are. You're not speaking to her ego. You're speaking to her essence. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Because you're not performing masculinity. You're embodying it. You're not trying to dominate her. You're trying to understand her. And in that understanding, you become more than a lover. You become a mirror. You reflect back to her the parts she forgot were beautiful. That's the gift of your age, of your experience, of your presence. And the truth is, younger women don't always know how to ask for that. They don't always feel like they can ask for that. But when you offer it, when you give it freely, when you speak from a place of emotional clarity and not conquest, she hears you, she feels you, and she remembers you. Not because you tried to impress her, but because you saw her. And that's the most powerful thing you can do. There's a moment in every deepening connection where the emotional tide begins to shift, where what was once a flirtation becomes something more rooted, more human, less performance, more presence. And this is where the words you choose, or perhaps the ones you don't choose, shape the way a woman feels in your presence long after she's left the room. The last thing she secretly wants to hear from you, the thing that surprises her in the most beautiful way, is when you say, I respect your boundaries. That may not sound seductive. It may not sound provocative. But in a world that often treats a woman's no as negotiable, her not yet as a challenge, and her silence as an invitation, those 4 words hold an unmistakable weight. Because when you say, I respect your boundaries, and more importantly, when you show it without her needing to repeat herself, you're doing something rare. You're not just making her feel safe. You're allowing her to relax, to trust you, to lean into her own rhythm without fearing that affection will be used as leverage, that attraction will be weaponized. You see many younger women carry invisible stories, stories of being pushed, being rushed, being shamed for protecting their own emotional space. So when you look her in the eye and say, you don't owe me closeness until you're ready for it, or when you stop when she hesitates, when you ask before you assume, when you pause and give her room, that's when desire blooms without resistance. Because respect is the foundation of safety, and safety is the soil in which real intimacy grows. It's not about restraint. It's about attunement. It's about showing her that your interest in her body is not separate from your care for her person. That you don't just desire her presence, you honor her permission, and that permission, it becomes trust. And that trust becomes chemistry, the kind of chemistry that doesn't just burn quickly and fade, the kind that deepens, the kind that makes her say to herself, I didn't expect to feel this safe with him. I didn't expect to feel this seen. And what's beautiful is that once a woman feels this, once she truly understands that your masculinity is not a force to overpower her, but a space to support her, she wants to come closer. She wants to give more freely. She wants to be soft, not because she has to, but because she can. And that is the ultimate seduction, not the chase, not the conquest, but the quiet knowing that she can unfold at her own pace, and you'll still be there. Now, I want to bring this conversation to a close, not by wrapping things in a neat little bow, but by inviting you into a deeper kind of listening. Because what you've just heard, these 6 things that younger women secretly love to hear, are not lines to be memorized or tricks to be played. They are invitations. Invitations into a different kind of masculine presence. One that is emotionally fluent. One that doesn't confuse control with confidence. One that doesn't equate speed with strength. You are not here to impress. You are here to connect. And when you begin to embody this, not just say the words, but live the posture, your entire way of relating begins to shift. You stop trying to win her, and you start witnessing her. You stop managing her reactions and begin meeting her reality. Because when a woman hears these things, you don't have to impress me. I like how you think. You don't owe me anything. You're not too much. Take your time. I respect your boundaries. What she's really hearing is that your interest is not conditional, that your affection isn't earned through compliance, that you see her as a full person, not a project. And in that space, her longing deepens, not just for you, but for herself in your presence. Because the most seductive thing you can give a woman is the experience of herself that she has when she's around you. So ask yourself this: how does she feel when you're near? Does she feel small? Or does she feel spacious? Does she feel like she's shrinking to fit your expectations or expanding into her own? This is the power you carry, not as a manipulator, not as a performer, but as a man who's lived enough to know that real connection doesn't come from the performance of love. It comes from the presence of love. And presence is built in moments. Moments of stillness, of listening, of not rushing to fill the silence with words. Moments where you say something not to impress her, but to reassure her. To let her know that she doesn't have to be anything other than exactly who she is. That her laughter is enough, her thoughts are enough, her slow unfolding is enough, and you are the witness to it all. So if you've ever wondered what makes an older man truly irresistible to a younger woman, it's not the car, the status, or the stories from a life well lived, it's the feeling he leaves behind in her. The feeling of being met, of being understood, of being desired, without condition. And the most beautiful part, you don't need to pretend to be anything. You don't need to play a role. You just need to be present, be kind, be honest, be still enough to notice what most men miss. That's where the magic lives. That's what she remembers. And maybe, just maybe, that's what she's been waiting for all along. So, if any part of this spoke to you, I want to hear from you. Share your experience in the comments. Tell me the words that changed everything for you. And if you're finding value in these conversations, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a man who needs to hear it. Because you never know, your story, your voice, your presence might be exactly what someone else has been longing for. Here's to living with depth, to speaking with intention, to loving with clarity, and to becoming the kind of man who doesn't just leave an impression, but leaves a legacy of understanding. Sometimes the things we say without words echo the loudest. A glance held just a second longer, a silence that doesn't need to be filled, a gesture of patience, a refusal to rush. These are the moments that make a woman feel chosen, not for what she offers, but for what she evokes. And yet, so many men still ask, what does she want to hear? But that's the wrong question. The question is, what does she need to feel? And are you the kind of man who can offer that feeling without turning it into a transaction? Let me tell you a story. A woman once told me about a man 10 years her senior. They met at a dinner party. Nothing extravagant. No fireworks. Just conversation. She said she didn't remember what he was wearing. Didn't care what he drove. But she remembered the way he listened to her, not just with his ears, but with his eyes, with his entire being. She said it was the first time in years she didn't feel like she was being sized up or decoded or categorized. He never interrupted. He never offered advice unless she asked. And at one point, after she'd shared something vulnerable, he didn't lean in to fix it or make a joke or pivot away. He just looked at her and said, "That sounds heavy. I'm glad you trusted me with that." No flirtation. Just presence. And that was the moment she knew this man wasn't afraid of her reality. He wasn't looking for the most fun version of her. He was looking for the truth. Now, you might think that being older means you need to perform more, that you need to be cooler, sharper, more impressive to keep up with the pace of youth. But let me tell you something. Your greatest strength isn't in how fast you can move. It's in how deeply you can stay, how firmly you can root yourself in maturity and offer her something she didn't even realize she was longing for, a relationship without power games, without ambiguity, without the exhausting need to prove. And I know it can feel vulnerable to show up with honesty instead of strategy, to say, "I like being around you." You don't need to do anything more than just be here. But that vulnerability, it's magnetic. Because younger women are not immune to depth. They crave it, even if they don't always have the language for it yet. And when you give it, you don't just stand out, you become unforgettable. So how do you build that kind of connection? You stop asking, "What can I say to get her?" and start wondering, "What do I want her to feel when she's with me?" Do you want her to feel understood, safe, stimulated, inspired? Then let your energy match that intention. If you want her to feel understood, then listen longer than you speak. If you want her to feel safe, then slow down when she hesitates. If you want her to feel seen, then ask her about the parts of her she doesn't show on Instagram. And if you want her to feel desired, then tell her, not because she earned it, but because you mean it, because she's worthy of hearing it, regardless of how she responds. That's the thing about older men who become magnetic. They're not trying to manipulate her experience. They're mastering their own. They know what energy they bring into the room. They understand the language of emotions, even the silent ones. They recognize that the strongest kind of masculinity doesn't force, it holds, it honors. It waits without withdrawing. And in that waiting, a woman opens up. Let me give you an example from a client I once worked with, a man in his early 50s, divorced, 2 grown kids, deeply introspective. He told me he was afraid of dating younger women because he didn't feel relevant anymore. He worried they wouldn't get his references, that he'd be boring, that he had too many stories that started with "back in the day." And yet, when he began dating again, he noticed something surprising. The younger women he met weren't bored by his stories. They leaned in. They listened, not because the stories were about his achievements, but because they revealed his wisdom, his self-awareness, his humility. They weren't looking for a man who was with it. They were looking for a man who was with them. A man who could say, "Here's what I've learned about life so far. You don't have to agree. I just want to offer it." That offering, that quiet generosity, is where older men become irresistible. Not because they're chasing the culture of youth, but because they're embodying the dignity of age. And when you can sit across from a woman, no matter her age, and give her the feeling of being understood, witnessed, and free, you become more than attractive. You become healing. And don't think she doesn't notice. She may not say it out loud. She may not have the words for it yet. But her body will relax. Her voice will soften. Her laughter will linger a little longer after your jokes. Her texts will become less filtered, more frequent. She will want to be near you, not because you're playing the game perfectly, but because around you, she finally feels like she can stop playing at all. And that, my friend, that's the most intimate place to be. When all the words have been spoken, when the flirtation fades into stillness, and the room grows quiet, what remains? Is it the clever joke, the compliment, the way you looked at her? Maybe. But more often than not, what remains is a feeling, the way she felt around you, the way her shoulders dropped when she realized she didn't have to perform, the way her thoughts came more easily because you were listening, not to respond, but to understand, the way her laughter surprised even herself because she didn't know she could be so at ease in someone else's presence. These moments, they're subtle. They don't announce themselves, but they matter deeply. Because long after she forgets what you wore, or how you styled your hair, or what kind of wine you ordered, she will remember the sensation of feeling safe, the rare, precious sensation of being met. This is your gift as a man who has lived, a man who doesn't chase validation because he already knows who he is, a man who isn't afraid of her softness or her strength, a man who stopped playing games, not because he's given up, but because he's grown up. You no longer need to manipulate attention. You command it through presence. And your presence, it's the medicine. It's the thing she didn't even know she was starving for until she tasted it. It's in the way you say, take your time, I'm here. It's in the way you don't flinch when she cries. It's in the way you don't panic when there's silence. It's in the way you hold her, not just her body but her truth, because what younger women secretly long for, what so many of them never say out loud, is to feel safe enough to be themselves in front of a man who will still want them, not in spite of their complexity, but because of it. So what are we really talking about here? Not strategy, not seduction techniques, not alpha male confidence. We're talking about attunement to her pacing, her rhythm, her unspoken language, the way she hesitates before she answers, the way she looks down when she's unsure, the way her laughter changes when she's testing you or trusting you, the way her stories loop back on themselves, not because she's confused, but because she's still finding the words for a part of herself she hasn't shown to anyone yet. And if you can meet her there, in the quiet space where her truth begins to surface, then you don't need to win her, she'll find her way to you. Because there's something profoundly erotic about being deeply seen, not as a trophy, not as a fantasy, but as a person. And older men, you have a unique ability to offer this, not just because of your years, but because of what your years have taught you. You've likely been hurt. You've made mistakes. You've seen relationships rise and fall. You've let go of illusions. You've learned to say, I don't know, without shame. You've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the doorway to connection. And if you haven't yet, that's okay. Because now you're ready to be the kind of man who doesn't just talk about connection, but creates it, moment by moment, choice by choice. And when you do, you'll begin to see something remarkable. She'll stop trying to impress you. She'll stop hiding the parts of herself that feel too emotional or too intense. She'll stop asking if she's enough, because she'll feel it. She'll feel enough in your gaze, in your voice, in your calm, not because you told her, but because you showed her. And that, dear man, is what turns a fleeting connection into a meaningful bond. That's what makes her look at you across a crowded room and smile in that quiet, knowing way. That's what makes her come back. Not because you chased her, but because she felt held in the way you see the world. So, as we close this space together, I want to leave you with something simple. Be the man who says the things she's never heard, not because she's not worthy of them, but because most men are too afraid to say them. Be the man who says, you don't have to perform. I like how you think. You don't owe me anything. You're not too much. Take your time. I respect your boundaries. Say them without needing a reward, without needing recognition. Say them because they are true, because they are generous, because they are rare. And when you say them, not as a tactic, but as a truth, you will become unforgettable. Not because you were the loudest in the room, but because you were the most present. And when a woman feels your presence, she begins to unfold, she begins to trust, she begins to choose you, not for what you offer, but for how she feels when she's with you. So if this conversation resonated with you, if you found yourself nodding or remembering a moment, or even feeling the ache of missed opportunities, know this: it's never too late to begin again, to speak differently, to show up differently, to love differently. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And if you are, everything changes. Thank you for being here. If this video spoke to you, share it with a friend. Leave a comment below. I want to hear the words that changed your life, the truths you've learned, and the kind of connection you long to build. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. We're building a space here for real conversations, real intimacy, and real transformation. Here's to speaking what's real. Here's to loving with depth. Here's to being the man she never saw coming, but will never forget. I'll see you soon.